Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tori and this is Holy City Mystic. So today we're going to talk about when astrology gets scary. This can be the type of thing where you're just reading a lot of articles online, there's a lot of deep diving into things, and you realize that your chart is not set up for a perfect life. This might also come from somebody getting a reading from someone who is a little bit less experienced or someone who really does believe in good charts versus bad charts. I've heard some terrible stories about people going and getting readings from people and somebody saying, oh wow, this means something really, really terrible. That is not true. I will tell you that right now. That is something that I believe very firmly as the proud owner of a bad chart. That is not true. It is the energy that you were given at birth, and what you do with it is the course of your life. Kind of getting ahead of myself here because I am very passionate about this topic. First of all, don't ever let anyone tell you your experience. Your experience is your experience is your experience. One of the very, very first readings I got, it was given to me by somebody. They had a really terrible relationship with an authority figure in their life, and I'm a Scorpio ascendant. That authority figure was also a Scorpio ascendant. And so this person told me, if you're a Scorpio ascendant, you're either all good or you're all bad. First of all, that is not true. Secondly, I spent the next 4 years of my life trying to figure out which one I was. That was not my experience. But since I believed that this astrologer was reading the stars, I believed them over my own experience. A reading should only empower your personal experience. I know with my readings that I give people, I tend to be like, I might assume that this might go a certain way in your life. How is it going? If you just look at the signs or you just look at the houses, each one means like 20 different things. Like, nobody can look at the fifth house and be like, that is romance and nothing else. The fifth house is children and creativity and beauty and gambling and sunshine. And yes, romance, but also fun and being proud of yourself, just like standing up in the light of joy. And so for anybody to be like, oh, it's not any of those things, it is just romance. And if you have Uranus in the fifth house, that means that you will cheat on your spouse. No, I mean, it can mean that, sure. It can also mean you might have sudden experiences with kids, like each one of your children was a total accident, a total happy surprise. It can also mean you get sudden hits of inspiration for artwork and stuff like that. It's like, for anyone to tell you your experience and it be like a very rigid thing, that is not astrologically correct. So don't let anybody do that. Nothing in your chart is going to be all good or all bad. So a grand trine. This is kind of the holy grail of luck in a chart, is having a beautiful grand trine in your chart. And some people are lucky enough to have this amazing overlapping grand trine where it's like all of your planets are all in fire, or all of your planets are in earth, or something like that. And it's just this beautiful flow of energy. These people, school comes easy to them. They're able to talk to just the right people at just the right times. They get offered jobs left and right. They meet partners and people come into their lives and they just attract all this luck. However, they've never spent any time building muscle. So what might happen at the first opposition, because Saturn is always going to be somewhere in the sky, Chiron's always going to be somewhere in the sky, Pluto's always going to be somewhere in the sky, and these are the planets that come and teach us lessons. They make us grow. So when one of those planets angles another planet just right, these people are going to have some type of growing experience, some type of opposition in their life. And guess what? If they don't have any bad angles in their chart, any challenging angles where it's like an opposition or a really challenging conjunction or a square, sesquiquadrate, or anything like that, the first time they meet that challenge, it is going to feel like the worst thing that has ever happened to them, because it actually is the worst thing that has ever happened to them, because they never built muscle on the way there. Now, if you have a lot of squares and oppositions in your chart, if you have a lot of squares and oppositions in your chart, all of that is resistance. And if you've ever worked out in your life, or you know anything about kinesthetic, I can't say that word either. If you know anything about like force and stuff, you know that resistance builds muscle. Resistance builds resilience. And so if somebody has a bunch of squares or oppositions in their chart and they meet up with a Saturn square something, they're going to skate through it a lot easier because they've been carrying around a square since birth. And so when they pick up another square, yes, it might be challenging. Yes, it might be a growing experience, but they're used to that energy. It's a very familiar energy to them. And so having things in your chart that are not ideal, they shouldn't be scary. They shouldn't be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is what I was incarnated into. What the hell was my soul thinking? Like, who planned this? Like, what is this? It shouldn't be like that. It should be this gratitude for how much at birth you were given that are tools that are going to help you for the rest of your life because you were given oppositions in your birth chart. You were given squares in your birth chart. So astrology is information. It should never be more than information. And if it ever gets to a point where you're like, I'm cursed, I'm absolutely effing cursed in my life, then obviously it's gone to a dark place and you should really take a step back from it. Because I believe, and this is how I use astrology, to be helpful, to shed light on what's going on. If you have Uranus crossing your moon, you're going to feel like you're going crazy. Like that is a period of time where you are going to feel like you're going crazy. And so, you could go running around talking to therapists, trying different antidepressants, anti-anxieties, getting your hormones checked, like all this stuff, and being like, what the heck is going on with me? Or you can go to your birth chart and be like, Uranus is crossing my moon right now. I'm gonna feel like I'm going crazy, but I'm not, and it's temporary and it's gonna go away. And then I'm gonna feel so much better for having gone through what I just went through. Another thing I think it's really important to remember is to steer clear of, I know this has a better name than this, but I'm just gonna call it this, the everything or nothing fallacy. I googled it before I started this video because I was trying to be responsible, and there is an all or nothing fallacy. That's not what I'm talking about. So I'll just explain it, and then if you know what the hell I'm talking about and it has a normal name, you can just drop that in the comments. That would be super helpful. But what I'm talking about is viewing everything in your chart as highly significant. This is something that we all go through when we're first learning astrology, where we look at every little tiny thing in our chart and we go deep diving on the blogs and the YouTubes, and we try to know exactly, all the little ins and outs of it and everything. I will tell you, I think it was Rick Levine that said this, that your chart reveals itself to you when you're ready to hear it, ready to understand it. And I truly believe that. I start out with a very meat and bones approach to astrology. There are a lot of asteroids that I just simply don't work with because I think it's more important to focus on the heavy hitters. So it might be the type of thing where you're just like, oh my gosh, Venus is in my 9th house. I don't know if that's good or not. And then you deep dive into it and some blogger says that Venus in your 9th house is actually really bad. And you're just like, oh my gosh, this is really terrible. And then you go to a professional astrologer and they're like, your Venus is trining Mars and it's also trining Saturn and it's in Libra and your Venus is very happy just because it's in the 9th house. That's not really like making your Venus sad or anything. It's just showing where in your life you're going to get this beautiful burst of Venus energy because your Venus is so well supported. So just kind of be aware of that as you're deep diving into your chart. I highly encourage people to do a lot of self-learning. I did a lot of self-learning and I think it's really, really great. When I started taking courses and stuff from astrologers, that was when I started picking out what was really important and what was significant and kind of leaving everything else to the side. Now, I will go back to that beautiful quote by Rick Levine saying your chart reveals itself to you when you're ready. Also, if somebody else said that, I am so sorry that I'm misquoting that. But that being said, you might have a very significant fixed star directly within like 0 degrees 2 minutes of your ascendant. And you dive really deep into that fixed star and you're just like, I had no idea, like this is opening up an entirely new aspect to my chart. However, if you start going into all the fixed stars and you're like, this fixed star is sesquiquadrating my Chiron, that might not be very significant. That really might not be the type of thing that you want to deep dive into because it's not going to hold a lot of value in your life day to day. So the upshot of this entire pep talk is just don't let anybody else dictate your experience. Remember that these are just the energies you were given at birth. What you do with them is up to you. I am one of those astrologers that definitely believes in free will. I do think you can make the most of your life. I do also believe that you can be more fatalistic and just kind of tap out and be like, well, you know, this is what my chart says, so I'm not going to work on myself. So just remember that as you're deep diving and you see something that is a little bit scary, or something that you feel like God doesn't love you or something because he put this thing in your chart, just remember that each thing means multiple things, and so just because it can mean that doesn't mean that it will for you. Also, thank you guys so much for hanging out, and I will talk to you next time.